Nashville Predators end their road trip not with a bang, but with a whimper. Absolutely demolished by the Winnipeg Jets. Is this just a bad stretch for the Predators, or are we starting to realize this is a bad team? We'll dive into that question today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, want to start out with a special shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys. We appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at the Hockey News.
Also want to mention today's episode brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. All right, Ann. Well, Nashville Predators, the good news, the road trip is over.
Yay, welcome home.
We're back home tomorrow.
Yay.
The bad news is pretty much everything else surrounding this team right now. Another loss, and in which the Nashville Predators never looked close at all. A 6-3 loss to the Winnipeg Jets. This was the same situation I felt like in the Calgary game, where even though it was tied at one point, 1-1 after the first period, it just never felt like the Nashville Predators were in this game.
I thought the Nashville Predators got to their game in the third period. The first period, a little bit of a slow start. I think Winnipeg got the jump on them. Winnipeg came out ready to play from puck drop. Nashville took a little bit to kind of get their groove going. The second period really felt like wheels were coming off the bus for the Nashville Predators, I think, with play and emotionally. The third period, I will say, I do feel like the Predators got a little bit more to their game. They came out with a little bit more fire, a little bit more intensity, a little bit more composure, because I feel like maybe there was a little bit of lack of composure in the second period. But at that point, it just was not going to be enough for the Nashville Predators to get back in this game. So I wouldn't say it felt as bad as the Calgary game, but I'm also not going to say it felt great either.
Yeah, I don't know about that. To me, the context of you just had that Calgary game, this was your response. The fact that the Predators really couldn't get their wheels turning until a little bit of magic late in the third, that's bad. Like, that's bad that you went through that last game. Your coach called you out, and you can't get anything going until the end of the game when you're already in a giant hole at that point. To me, that kind of makes this worse, Ann, was that this was the opportunity. You got humbled. You know what you needed to do, and you didn't do it. And you came out with another, I would, to be honest, a lackluster effort from a lot of the players. So to me, that context makes it a little bit worse. For those of you who didn't see the game, you didn't miss much. As we mentioned, 1-1 at the end of the first period. Philip Forsberg got the goal there. And then 3 goals within 10 minutes for the Jets in the second period. Forsberg, again, got one back to make it 4-2. Phil Tomasino scored in the third period, his first goal of the year. We'll talk about his game coming up in just a little bit, but the Jets added 2 more in the third, including an empty netter by Kyle Connor, who got a hat trick in this game. Preds are getting good at giving up hat tricks to star players in the Western Canada. 6-3 Winnipeg, the final score on this one. Ann, what is your one word to describe the game?
My one word is manual. So when I was 16 years old, got my driver's license. I was a great driver. I was a safe driver. I was very responsible, of course. But then my now ex-brother-in-law, that's a podcast for another day, said to me,
Can't
"Do you
wait.
know how to drive a stick?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Everybody should know how to drive a stick because you just never know when you're going to be in that situation." And so he took it upon himself, bless his heart, and I mean that genuinely, to teach me how to drive a stick shift. And if any of you have learned how to drive a stick shift, you may be the most confident automatic car driver, and then you have to relearn so much. And here's the thing, the instructions to drive a stick are very simple. It's, push in the clutch, put the car in gear, let the clutch out, push the gas. Like, this is not, you don't have to unfold the instruction manual to figure out how to drive this. But the reality of executing it took weeks and weeks and weeks, and more patience from my ex-brother-in-law than any saint ever had on earth. And this is a little bit what this game felt like to me. Like, we know what the Nashville Predators needed to do. It's some basic things, execute on the power play. We're going to talk about that. Execute well, come out with some speed, basically do what you didn't do before.
Right.
Basic instructions. But it was the execution of it was not smooth, friends. We had some whiplash in this game, and being able to come out and play a 60-minute complete game, being able to come out and execute on the power play, being able to keep your composure when you are frustrated with some questionable reffing, being able to get momentum back after you are scored on. Those are all pretty basic instructions. And the team is just learning how to drive the manual.
Yeah. I'm also going to go with the car for my
Excellent.
one word, and I'm going to go with the Griswold car.
Oh, come on.
As my one word. If you've seen National Lampoon's Vacation, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're doing that big, road trip out to Wally World. And just by the end of the movie, by the time they get to Wally World, it's just rolling in. It's got replacement tires, the hoods, it's just a broken down car. Crashes in the desert at one point, has the rims and wheels taken off of it at one point. It's just like the more that you go on this road trip, the more drama happens to the family, but the more crazy stuff just happens to the car. And to me, that felt like the Nashville Predators getting back home to Nashville last night.
Yes.
I could see just after everything they've been through this road trip, a lot of the tough losses, especially the last two,
right?
Kind of embarrassing play, questions about some of the players and performance in this team. Had a couple injuries on the trip. Ryan McDonough mainly. I feel like they were just when the plane got home last night and landed, rolled into the hangar with the wheel bouncing,
yes.
Smoke coming from the engines,
yes,
a big comical X duct tape on the nose, maybe just the front window broken or anything like
right.
that. If you're listening, I know that's not how planes work. Shut up, let me do the metaphor. That was the picture I got of them coming home, and just the players one at a time just walking up with hair all disheveled.
Right.
Philip Forsberg's got a rip in his clothes, Sherwood's bleeding from his nose, something like that. That's just the image I see of the Predators finally getting home. Eyes wide with shock, bags under their eyes. That seems to be how this road trip ended.
Yeah, I love that metaphor. I do picture the plane kind of skidding in sideways into, the terminal here, because this was a rough road trip, and here's the thing. You could come home from a 5-game Western road trip 1-4 and still have a good feeling about some things. And I'm not writing off the Nashville Predators, and I do think there were some good things that we saw, but there weren't enough of them to feel like this road trip kind of kept the team on that same upward trajectory that we saw earlier in the season. I think that's the part that's the most frustrating. Is this definitely felt like a dip. This wasn't the same direction. This was a dip in what the Predators can do. And so this 1-4 feels very 1-4.
Yeah. A couple of one words from our wonderful Locked On listeners. We have terrible from Robert Martin.
Love the GIF.
Uninspired from Julie Shire. Sorry if I pronounce that. At Bonds on Ice said, ouch. Interesting one from Robert Fucci. He said Op 4, and he said, in the Army, a group of soldiers and actors that serve as the opposition force, so we have someone to practice our offenses against. And this is what it felt like the Preds were against the Flames and against the Jets, whereas just like they felt like they're almost practice fodder for the other team's defense. So a couple of interests. I like that one.
I like that analogy. That's great.
Yeah. For sure. Keep sending in your one words after each Predators game, whether they're good, whether they're bad. We'll read some of our favorites on the show the next morning. More too from this game. Phil Tomasino back in the lineup after a lot of questions about what was going to happen to him. Winds up scoring his first goal in return. We'll talk about that and some of the officiating in this game. And because that's something that I think a lot of people want to put under the microscope from last night. First, though, I want to mention today's episode brought to you by Parkview Advance. As a business owner, you realize there are times when receivables might fall behind, but that doesn't mean you need to fall behind on vendor payments, payroll, or more importantly, rent for your office. For more than 25 years, Parkview Advance has helped business secure working capital from $5,000 to $1.5 million. Parkview Advance can approve your working capital in as little as 24 hours, and it's a much easier process than you might imagine. We invite the many entrepreneurs that are Locked On NHL fans to learn more by calling Parkview Advance at 203-675-0071 or go to parkviewadvance.com. If your business needs working capital, call Parkview Advance today. Parkview Advance, helping businesses with their working capital. Go to parkviewadvance.com.
This episode is also brought to you by our great friends at Collective. If you run a solo small business, you're an army of one, but you still need a CPA, a bookkeeper, separate payroll solutions, and more. Let Collective take care of the paperwork while you take care of business. They say if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. But as a freelancer, there is always that dreaded paperwork that comes with it. With Collective, you can focus on your business and let them focus on the paperwork. Collective is the #1 financial solution for freelancers, contractors, and self-employed entrepreneurs that lets you focus on your passion, not your paperwork. Join the thousands of solopreneurs who have saved an average of $10,000 per year on taxes with their structure. Right now, Collective is offering 1 month free and no onboarding fee when you go to collective.com/LockedOnNHL and tell them Locked On NHL sent you. That is a $550 value for free when you go to collective.com/LockedOnNHL and tell them again, Locked On NHL sent you. Collective.com/LockedOnNHL. And again, let them know we here at Locked On NHL sent you their way.
All right, and Nashville Predators lose 6-3 to the Winnipeg Jets. Fall hard at the end of their road trip. Do you think it's time to kick the Hornets' nest right now?
I mean, do you want to?
Yes. Hey, Ann, what did you think of the officiating in last night's Preds-Jets game?
Oh gosh, my one word for the officiating in last night's game was what the flagnog was going on with that officiating. And here's what's real. I am not a fan of blaming officiating. Like the officials did not cost the Nashville Predators this game necessarily. You know, the Predators cost themselves this game on a number of other planes. But you cannot have officiating like this at the NHL level. You cannot. When you have nothing short of a textbook slash on Tommy Novak and no call, when you have a slash, a textbook slash on Gus Nyquist, and you just have a really good actor who committed it, you can't have a no call. And then you have a goal scored with an immediate wave off. Immediately the ref says, no goal, no goal. This is goaltender interference. And then, Kyle Connor kind of said, but what about, or Adam Lowry is like, but, and then they huddle up and they go, just kidding, it's a goal.
Yeah. I was like, fine.
Okay.
Like, let that be the call on the ice.
Come on.
My thing is just like, if you saw enough to call it, then call it. Like, own the call. And it wasn't, it wasn't even, the ref right there. The ref that was closest to it saw it. And what was it? I can't tell if it was like one of the linesmen that were there that saw something different, or the back end ref. But why wouldn't you just let the ref that's right there make the first call?
Yeah.
On it.
Yeah.
And it's just, that to me, like, it's like, if it's a review, like, if you need to challenge it, then stick with your call, say what you saw, and let the other team challenge it. Like, that's the stat. You're gonna let somebody who is on the other end of the ice like talk it,
overturn it.
Like, it's like, obviously, like, it's not the reason the Predators lost the game by he starts the imagination. The Preds were playing bad, but you do look at those moments and say, okay, there were opportunities for the Predators to kind of turn their fortunes right then and there.
Right. There were opportunities right then and there. And here's what's real. Even if you were a Winnipeg Jets fan, you had to be a little bit frustrated with some of the calls, because immediately after that goaltender interference kerfuffle, there was a soft makeup call on the Winnipeg Jets. And it was one of those things where you're like, I know what you're going to do to try to make this okay, and you can't do it. Those are calls where, if this game is a little bit different, if the Nashville Predators are playing a little bit better, if the Nashville Predators power play is chawing along a little bit better, those kind of messed up calls are going to change a game. I don't think, I'm with you, they didn't change the outcome of this game necessarily, for the Nashville Predators, but it did change opportunities. It does change momentum. If the Predators had, if that goal had stood as, or if the call had stood as no goal, that puts it on Winnipeg to challenge it. And they weigh that very differently in that situation. When you change that call and now you say, hey, Nashville, you're the guys who have to challenge it, that changes what the team can do with that call. Nashville wasn't in a position where they could challenge that call. Nobody's fault but Nashville's, but you can't do that as an official. You cannot affect decision-making in a game that much with calls that are that off, just off. They were off last night. The officials were Nashville and Calgary last night.
Interesting officiating, to say the least there. But again, Preds 0 for 5 on the power play.
Woof.
You can't say they didn't get chances of their own to kind of turn this game around, and just couldn't do it. So who knows? Maybe 8 power plays would have finally yielded a goal for the Preds last night.
Gosh, it was bad.
Who knows? Phil Tomasino scoring in his return, that is a positive. We'll talk about his game last night. And the question I think a lot of people are, starting to debate after a loss like this, is this a bad stretch for the Nashville Predators, or are we starting to realize that this might be a bad hockey team, or at least maybe worse than we thought maybe a couple of weeks ago? Let's put it that way. We'll talk about that coming up in just 1 second. But first, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Folks, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the world today, a lot of stuff we can't prepare for, natural disasters, supply chain issues, or something as simple as forgetting your medication when you're traveling. That's where Jace Medical comes in. They have something called the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. And all it takes to get a Jace Case is to fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians. And you get ongoing care from physicians from any treatment-related questions, and it's all doctor-created and doctor-recommended, so you can tell it's legit. Jace also now has a 1-year supply of ED medications, generics for Cialis, Viagra, and Revatio. You can get this and have it ready for you whenever you go out of town, or if you just need a little peace of mind in case there's supply chain issues or anything else that might keep you from getting your medication. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. They're thankful for the service. Supply chain issues caused him to cut pills in half in order to have it. He had to order most of his daily meds with a year's supply. He ordered an antibiotic kit, and they feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies, and they highly recommend it for everyone. So if you or someone you love would love to get peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. All right, Ann, I guess one positive from last night's game is that Phil Tomasino scored a goal.
He did.
And it was actually, to his credit, pretty good goal. A pretty good, like, hand-eye coordination on that deflection there. I love the reaction from both Tomasino, but I especially love the reaction from Michael McCarron behind him, who was hyped to see him score. You can just tell that, like, everybody on this Preds lineup was really wanting Tomasino to get one. McCarron, especially, somebody who played a lot with Tomasino when he first came into the NHL 2 years ago. The old line mate there. That there was also, Tomasino and Luff were the two people that gave him the nickname Big Sexy. So, yeah.
Do we thank him for that, or I'm not sure?
Yeah. But you can just, I think that kind of gives you an indication of what Andrew Brunette said was this is a kid that's working hard.
Right.
And practices, trying to get his game back on track. And it's good to see it pay off last night. And you saw how happy the rest of the team was for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been a really tough season for Phil Tomasino. He's been a healthy scratch at times. He has struggled when he's been in the lineup. He has not been able to capitalize on his offensive talent, which we know that he has. So it was really good to see him score in this game. I hope that the leash is not too short for Tomasino, because I think you have to give players a long opportunity to kind of work their way out of this. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Cody Glass is healthy. He is close to returning, according to head coach Andrew Brunette, who talked on Robbie and Rexroad yesterday about kind of where injury status was. McDonough could be back in the lineup Saturday. Glass is very close to being back. Schenn still a couple weeks out. So as Glass comes back in the lineup, it will be interesting to see if Tomasino has done enough with the couple of opportunities he's had on this road trip to continue to earn some time to get back to his game. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen next for him, but it was really good. I think everybody feels good to see Tomasino score. This is a young guy. You want to see him be successful.
For sure. And it's going to be interesting to see kind of how Andrew Brunette handles some of these roster decisions moving forward, balancing getting people a shot with, kind of making decisions on who's hot, who's not, who has chemistry and who has, and who doesn't.
Right.
Yuso Parssinen finally a healthy scratch last night. I think that's an interesting thing that maybe warrants a discussion at some point next week as well. Yeah. And this is, okay, let me preface this by saying that I don't think anybody in Nashville was picking the Nashville Predators to exactly bowl through the NHL this year. I think we were very honest about what this team was. This was a team that, they had some pieces going for it. They had some good things, but this was going to kind of be hey, we're committed to transitioning this in a new direction. It's going to take some time in order to do that. It's going to take some time to get these young players up to speed. We knew that going in to all of this. We knew it going in.
We did. Yeah.
And maybe the first few weeks of the season gave Preds fans, I don't want to say false hope, but maybe changed perspective a little bit. Maybe it was, okay, maybe we can at least be sort of where we were last year, sort of in the middle. Right. Because, hey, we do have Ryan O'Reilly who came into the fold, and there's still Forsberg and Yossi and, UC Saros and Net, maybe this is, at least we're further along than where we thought we would be.
Right.
Now, I think the conversation is, okay, where is this team?
Yeah.
Is this just a bad stretch? Is this just a team that has a lot more in them? Or is this a team that they're starting to kind of show what they're going to be as the year goes on?
I think that this is not a bad team because this is a group with good pieces. You mentioned Ryan O'Reilly. We can talk about Tommy Novak and Luke Evangelista and Kiefer Sherwood as a line. UC Saros, Roman Josi, not the offensive production that we're probably used to, but he's also kind of playing a little bit of a different role with a different system. So this is a team with good pieces, and I stand by that. I think there are really good pieces. They are not putting it together right now. And I think it's twofold. I don't know that I necessarily say false hope from the early performances that they had. And remember, they didn't come away with wins in a lot of those really good performances. But I do think they're also playing against teams that are revving up their seasons as well. So you're playing a Boston Bruins team that is coming out, of the gate, and they're kicking off their season as well. So I think it's a little bit easier to look good early in the season against teams that are still kind of shaking off the rust and dust. I do stand by the fact that this team is in a good spot for a retool. Y'all, this is what you wanted. This is what you asked for. This is when I see people on social media last night, just gnashing their teeth over, we need to tear this down. Y'all, look down. We burned it down. Grab a marshmallow and toast it. It has happened. Like, this is what you wanted. It's like if your partner says, I am begging you to load the dishwasher, and you load the dishwasher, and they come back and they go, but not like that. This is exactly what has to happen with the Nashville Predators. You have good players. You have good pieces. You have a new system. They are not jiving together right now. I do not necessarily think, and if you go back and listen to previous episodes, I have said, look, the Predators are not going to win Stanley Cup, y'all. Predators are not going to make a deep cup run. They are going to be better than what we saw in this 1-4 trip, because I think time is going to correct some of these things. I think familiarity is going to correct some of these things. But this is a team where you don't develop a Luke Evangelista overnight. You don't develop a Juuso Parssinen overnight. And so you've just got to kind of settle in. And, I don't even think it's about being a optimist. I think it's about being a realist. This team was very upfront. This is a reset. This is what that looks like.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a bad team. I think it's a team that's not performing well, that has good pieces, but this is a process, y'all. Embrace the suck.
We're not the San Jose Sharks. Let's make that clear right now. I think there's, everybody kind of wants to figure things out. They want to know the direction we're going. They want to know the timetable.
Right.
They want to know who's going to be on the ice when, we lift the Stanley Cup in 8-9 years, whenever a lot of people think this, timetable is going to be. The truth about, a team rebuilding is that there's a lot of unknowns,
Yes.
and you don't know, some of these high profile draft picks you don't know if they're going to work out or not. You don't know if what you have in the locker room is the right piece. You don't know if you're going to be able to get, a king's ransom for, a Roman Josi or a UC Saros or whoever you want to trade from this team. There's a lot of unknowns. And I think, because of circumstances surrounding a lot of the Predators fan base, there's a lot of younger fans, a lot of people who started watching, during the cup run.
Right.
Because of that, I think there are a lot of people who've never really been through a long, grinding, grueling rebuild before, where there's this much uncertainty. The Predators haven't had a situation like this really since their first 5 years of the team when they were trying to build up that initial team. And I think what you're going through right now, when you're unsure of the role Phil Tomasino is going to play, or like, you don't know if re-signing Phil Forsberg was a wise investment or not. Or there's, debate over whether or not Saros should be traded. We'll get to that next week, but there is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknown, and the best way I can describe it, and we're running out of time, so here's a good place to end it on. The best way to get through this rebuild, Preds fans, is just sit back and watch.
Right.
And see what happens and take it day by game. And I know that's frustrating to hear, but that's the reality of a rebuild. Is you do not know when you pull that trigger, when you start trading people away, when you start, collecting futures, you have zero idea of what's going to happen. You have your plan. You have what you think is going to happen. You have what you hope is going to happen. It's a different thing altogether to see it come together on the ice. And that is the reality Preds fans need to face as we get through this season.
It's a process.
It is a process. We ran a little bit long, so we will just say goodbye here. You can find Anne's work at the Hockey News, InsideThePreds.com, right?
Right. Perfect.
You can find me at PenaltyBoxRadio.com. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back next week with all new episodes.